Hello, this is Raphael. It's Saturday. What day is the week? Is this? Darn, I forgot. Anyway, it's a Saturday. That's all. It's been a very busy week with a lot of ups and downs. One high note is that we finally, boy, I'm getting fat. Oh, I was fat already. Anyway, good. And the high note is that a client of mine, Mary, she finally got her deed after 2 years and 10 months. This is a case involving HSBC. We had a bunch of issues. It's one of those Pancho Murphy law cases that whatever can go wrong, well, and if you add the Pancho thing, which is the Mañana thing, it just gets worse. So much worse. Yes, there's worse than Pancho Murphy. And anyways, after 2 years and 2 months, 10 months, my client finally received the deed, not without a lot of drama caused by the incompetence of HSBC and other sources that I don't want to name without causing much more issues to me. Very few cases that I will be willing to take involving HSBC. It's incredible. I don't want to go much into detail, but just to have you understand this was a I'm modifying a fideicomiso and adding someone to the fideicomiso to be a co-trust beneficiary owner. 2 years and 10 months. It costs a lot of money. It cost me a lot of time. I could not raise one dime on my fees based on the actual agreement that I had with my client. So the lack, not that foresight, but I never had been involved. I mean, in the 30 some years that I've been doing this, never had something like this gotten so slow and had been so incompetently handled that it's just, it caused a lot of grief to my clients and to me, and a lot of stomach ache. By the way, this is Mexican medicine for heartburn. I got into boxes, cases of this during those 2 years, 10 months. Okay. It's I'm really happy to see my group has grown quite a lot over the past 3 months or 4 months, pretty much so. Every week I get like 50, 60 people join in. I wonder why this has gone. I mean, I'm happy, but I hope it's word of mouth and it's not just people who stumble upon my group's, my Facebook legal blog. And that's why I keep asking people, what brought you here? What are you looking to find or to learn? And occasionally people leave on their own will. I rarely block anyone. And I do block a number of people. Those that are nothing to do with national origin, but when someone from Thailand, Bangkok, from Arabia, with no ties to Baja, to Mexico, or to any of you or me, I just know that this is someone trying to waste someone else's time, and I'm not going to allow that. I have very little time to spare, so I block them. And yeah, I occasionally block people because they beg for it. Yes. Well, I won't go into it, but I have and I will. But I do ask from those newcomers to actually use search tools that are integrated into all group pages with Facebook. Mine is not an exception because you can go to the magnifying glass, type in keywords, and find a number of articles. And if you don't find what you're looking for, send me a note. But you don't need to send a post and ask for my approval because I won't allow posts into my blog, I will allow comments or questions on the open thread where it says questions. Okay, so look it up, type that up, or scroll down, you'll find it. Okay, what else? Yes, I keep getting requests, in particular from La Paz, for people wanting to buy property which is less than $60,000. And when I quote my services, obviously I get reactions such as, "Wow, your fee is kind of high considering what we're paying for the property." But in all those cases, I always provide options for you to look. And when you hire someone else to handle this, for you to know what you need to ask from the seller, what you need to put up yourself, and all that. But again, I keep saying it, no free legal advice, and I keep giving free advice. It's like a drinking problem. I like to help, but yeah, I'd like to help my costs. Yes, my group page has grown. Has my billing and number of clients grown in that same proportion? No, it hasn't. I got more calls, more consultation, and that's good. I like to be involved and active and relevant. But some cases people ask 3, 4, 5 questions and into Baja Legal Advice in the questionnaire, or when I, without knowing, left a topic open and people start getting through there. And I'm not the cheapest option. I'm not the most expensive option. I just charge for what I believe is fair, and if you don't feel that way, well, good thing you have options, good or bad as they may be, regardless. Just make sure that you make an informed decision, whatever you do. And, well, without wasting much time from you, this is a topic that I want to address today because it's become quite, well, I've been asked 5 times over the last 10 days to review purchase agreements for pre-construction in Baja California Sur. Some from properties worth $150,000 all the way to $60,000, or another case for $760,000. So all sorts of. But this is a topic about reluctance. What is the reluctance about? Well, it's the reluctance of developers that have this property that they want to develop and sell units, condominium units. People walk in and see a model, and then they get this salesperson that oftentimes is an expert at selling, selling you into the idea that this is your best decision, it's cheap. Oh, by the way, you make us a deposit for $3,000 and you have a warranty that we're not going to sell that unit. And but you have to put down 50% of the property as worth within the next 30 days, or you will be losing out and we'll sell it to someone else. And if you want to come back then and buy that same property or whatever's available, it's going to be so much higher because we're doing great in sales. And it's you're going to have to pay us more. Okay, that's quite common. But guess what? Let's see. 5 of the 6 properties that I looked at in those contracts shared with me by the buyer. 5 of those 6 are being funded entirely by the buyers. They don't have a lending source. Guess what? Oftentimes, the land that they're building on is not even the developers. It's more like an association and participation where they get a friend of them or a partner of them sharing or contributing the property, not transferring ownership, but just allowing the construction to happen in his property, and then they bring a contractor and an architect, and they have this development, but they don't have the funding. So they're using probably some of their own money into getting somewhere with the project, and then they start, they build a home or a model or whichever. They put a trailer and flags and offer a water lease, and then they start selling. Okay. But they lack the permits. Okay. And I'm not just talking about construction permits. If it is the development, they have to get a lot of other permits from the state. I will not go into naming each and every one because I don't even know what they are. This is a contractor shop, not mine. But they need more than just a construction, building permits. Okay, they need to have a permits to allow the development to be erected. And no, they're not legally authorized to sell property. No, they're not. But they do regardless because they could not care less. The state knows this and they take no action. In Baja California, where I live, it's fraud. When someone offers property for sale, when that property is not even owned by the seller, or that hasn't been actually licensed entirely, that is generic fraud. Baja California Sur is a different animal. They allowed a lot of crap. Yes, sorry for my Italian. Crap. That is how the state works. They allow a lot of this mismanagement. Yeah, a state with few rules where anyone can come in from any other country in the world and put a sign and look smart like this and take a picture and start acting as a real estate agent. Yeah, you people that know this, the Jew people, yes, I will call them the Jew people, is those people that have no regard to the laws, no regard to customs, and no decency, because what they're doing sometimes is siding with borderline criminals to offer property that has no assurance to be constructed or to be transferred. Okay, so enough of that. But going back to the topic, a lot of those developments happen on property that is not even owned by the developer. Sometimes not even one of the partners. It's just someone who eventually will sign off. Okay. Other times the property is owned by the developer. But again, the problem is there's the reluctance, as I said before, and the first reluctance from the developer, from the seller, is that they don't accept changes to the contract. What is a contract? It's consensual. Okay. It's supposed to have at least two parties agree on something, on a number of topics. But when you're force-fed down your throat to accept those terms, it's something else beyond a contract, even though it's called the same. But you're supposed to know you need to be informed in order to make an informed decision. And that means that, for one, yes, you have a right to demand changes. But what are those changes? Well, you need to know, like through the advice of someone like me, what you need to add or to remove or to balance out in the contract. One of those changes has to do with escrow. I haven't seen the first contract on pre-construction where the developer is willing to accept escrow. And guess why? Oftentimes it's going to be because, as I said before, the developer doesn't have the financing to construct the project, to build the project. Therefore, where's he going to get money? His own sources, his own pockets, investment? Well, tell you what, the same old adage about the best way to make money is by using someone else's money. Yeah, it still works the same way. It does, yes. But, at least in the U.S., you have the protection of a system that is protective of the consumer. Not in this country. This country is still in the dark ages. It's so backwards, so negligent, and so you get, man, I mean, this is the Barbary Coast in many ways. Some agents may be shaking their head and saying, Rafael's doing it again. He's scaring people. No, it's not impossible to buy property, but under right terms, under fair terms, and with protection in case that the project doesn't ever get completed. So again, what is the reluctance about accept changes in their contract? Second, they don't want escrow, because when they put money into escrow, it's it gets deposited in a bank, in a foreign bank, because there's no escrow in Mexico. There's escrow representatives, U.S. escrow companies being represented in Mexico, and yes, they're able to do business, and they're solvent and they're safe. Those that I know. So the developer doesn't want escrow involved because he's relying on getting the money in his account the next day or the next week or the next month. So without those funds going into his account, he won't have a means to finance the construction. So he's not going to allow escrow. That's very preoccupying. It should allow escrow if they had a lender, a bank or whatever, financing the construction. But since 5 of the 6 companies don't have financing, well, you're financing that. Yeah, you're running a huge risk, regardless of that being $50,000 or $1 million or more. Okay, what is the other reluctance about? Me. They don't want me involved. Is it because I'm an attorney? Well, yeah. Is it because I'm that popular? Probably not. Is it because I'm rather cold about discussing details in the for terms? Yes. Yes, they don't want this. They don't want you to be protected because all they care about is their own interest. Oftentimes you read a contract and it's like the buyer this, the buyer that, but very few clauses will actually say the developer is bound to the following. One other reluctance that the developers is the invoice. In Mexico, when you buy from a business, not from an individual, when you buy land or a building or a home or commercial space or industrial space, the seller is a company. They have to give you an invoice. And this invoice is not just a typical invoice. It's an electronic invoice we call factura. Okay, look up the article that I have on my blog, and it's F-A-C-T-U-R-A, factura, F-A-C-T-U-R-A. That invoice has to be given to you when you make the last payment on the property. But, let's address payment and closing. A lot of people assume that when you use the term closing in Canada or U.S. means the same as in Mexico. Oftentimes it does not, because I heard so many times someone looking at property in Tijuana and telling the client that they're going to close next week. They bought today. I mean, they made a deposit today, and there's the agent is saying that you can close next week. What are we talking about here? There's a change of me. Some of you may notice when you get to read this, because so far I just see my sister Maribel and someone else connected, but eventually this video will be seen by others. Closing next week is something we need to dissect. What did the agent actually mean to say? Closing doesn't mean that you pay the balance, whatever the balance is, and that you get keys in possession and legal ownership. No, it's not. To them, closing means that you paid off this much money. That's what they call closing. But closing doesn't mean keys, possession, and legal transfer of property. No, that's something else. So make sure to ask, what do you mean by closing? Can you put it in writing? And do you have power of attorney to do that? Because if you're just a salesperson, no disrespect, whatever you sign has no binding powers because you have no powers of attorney. Therefore, the company can renege and refuse to acknowledge what a salesperson did. So careful with how you do things. It's not that easy. It's that simple, straightforward as in the U.S. or Canada or other countries, and which are not third world countries like ours. Okay, like us. So closing thing, it doesn't mean transfer of property. There's in the U.S. and Canada, you may buy property when escrow passes, then you may have become the legal owner of the property. Okay. In Mexico, no, it's a two-stage process. You buy, and then eventually you get transferred. So when I step in, I like to have a client put down the minimum amount of money, and then fully fund escrow 5 days prior to the transfer of the property. meaning the fideicomiso. And I'm not even addressing the fideicomiso today. I'm just talking about the problem with pre-construction contracts. So that invoice, so that I can close on the invoice part. If you don't get that invoice within the same month that you pay the balance, you will not be able to deduct the cost of acquisition of your property. Okay, you will not be able to deduct it. What does that mean? You paid some $300,000 for something. You sell it within the next 3 years. Okay, and what is capital gains? Capital gains in Mexico is 35% on the profit. But if you sell the property for $300,000 and you paid $300,000, yeah, you broke even, you would say, right? That you have no capital gains, that you did not make a dime. That's true. But guess what? Without the invoice, you will pay 35% on your $300,000. Yes, you heard that right. You're paying 35% of the money that you brought from abroad to pay for this property here, because you're not able to deduct the cost of acquisition, and you're selling for $300,000. You get Alexa, what is 35% of $300,000? Alexa is being quiet. Alexa, what is 35% of $300,000?
35% of 300,000 is 105,000.
You hear that? You will be losing $105,000 on capital gains tax on the money you paid on the property, because had you demanded the factura, you would have been able to deduct that. So someone who does get a factura and eventually gets legal status in Mexico and complies with a number of other conditions, that person or those owners of that property can qualify for capital gains tax exemption, meaning that if you pay $300,000 and you had a factura, okay, you're able to depreciate the property at the rate of 3% for a maximum of 10 years. So you can depreciate the structure, not the whole value of the property. An appraisal has two parts: the value of the land the house is on, and then the house or the building or whatever you erected there. So, but if you have a legal status and you comply with a number of exemptions, you are able to protect up to $243,000 on the profit. So if you're selling, say, for that house that you bought for $300,000, you're selling for $500,000, you have a $200,000 profit. If you did not qualify for capital gains tax exemption, you would pay 35% of the profit, which is $70,000, which is 35% over $200,000. But since you would qualify on that exemption that the government gives the homeowner who has not sold a primary residence over the past 3 years, you can say you have an exception up to $243,000. But if your profit was $200,000, you still have $43,000 on wiggle room. So as you see, you're able to say, but going back to factura, would you get any of these benefits if you did not know that you must have a factura given to you the same month that you paid for the property? You could get that the next day after the beginning of next month. But if you didn't get that factura on time, even if you get a factura later, it will not help you at all. None. You will be paying 35% on everything. So make sure to understand that the factura is non-negotiable. You have to have it. They're not doing you a favor. It's a tax obligation in Mexico. That underline that, put an asterisk right on top of your priority list. Facturas do or die. Another reluctance on the developer is to agree to a specific target date to deliver the unit and the common areas. Unless it's an apartment, it's a condominium, you still have common areas you're buying. So they have to create a condominium regime. And that regime, or as it's called, sounds like a South American or somewhere where there's a socialist government where they have their regime. That's why it's called regime de condominio, which is when you go condo, you have to get licenses, but it takes months and months and months to get them. So the developer usually leaves the filing for the licenses for last. And oftentimes they deliver a finished unit and a condominium, and all the common areas and amenities are, they're fine. And they give you possession, but they go into soft closing because they cannot transfer the property, the ownership under the fideicomiso, because what? They don't have all the licenses. Remember we discussed that? And the condominium regime is not finished. The government will not allow the transfer of the property. A lot of developers have done that, from Cerritos to San Lucas to San Jose del Cabo. I've seen that quite a bit. Out of those 6 cases that I discussed that I review property, they're all pre-construction. Not one has all the licenses, not one. And one of those cases is a client who put down $95,000 this November 2019 to be delivered the property on March of 2021, I believe. And guess what? We're 2 years after, the man is still waiting. Good thing the developer, decent enough, proposed the seller, the buyer, my client, to be compensated somehow for this. So he tendered a proposal to be paid a percentage on the monies paid and a target date, which is still way in the future, because they finally got a lender. The work stopped because whatever, they took the money from sales, or the sales didn't pick up. I don't know. Eventually, this man is being protected, and he signed an agreement, and I'm asking that that agreement be signed in the presence of a notary public to make sure that they can take that to court and protect themselves. So again, specific target date. Careful with ambiguity. If you're buying, you're entering an agreement today, you're not buying property today. You're entering an agreement, okay? Eventually, you will be buying. It's a different moment in the sense that you're just building up the foundation for this. But make sure to lay a foundation according to you, not to them, because they're keeping to themselves a lot of information. They're not going out full disclosure. And the way they draft this agreement is so ambiguous that it's done for a purpose, to escape responsibility. So make sure to have a specific target date, January 1st, 2023. And right after agreeing to that, make sure that there's penalties on the developer for failing to deliver a finished unit, a finished building, and or the transfer of the property into a fideicomiso under your name. Too many cases go into soft closing because the developer doesn't have all the licenses again, okay? So they put you in possession. That's better than nothing. 99% of the law, possession, okay? Same as here in Mexico. But the one of the most relevant issues here is that they either agree to a specific target date to deliver, or they simply don't want the penalties. Or they draft a clause which is ambiguous and eventually it's not binding. It's not binding, and they escape like the Matrix. They go this way, that way, backwards, and front, and I know every dimension. To escape responsibility, and they're still holding on to your money. So make sure that the penalties are a percentage, a monthly percentage to be paid to you within this many days after the end of the month. If they promise delivery on the agreement to be January 1st, 2023, January 2nd, it's late already. So if they're late, you don't have to wait 30 days for them to be responsible for penalties. No, the next day is a day too late. They're already incurring a penalty, and that percentage that you agree on has to be made good on, okay? And then you cannot just, okay, he's going to give me 5% back every 30 days. Good, that's good. But for how long are you willing to wait on them to deliver the property? They're just probably buying time. At 5%, yeah, better than nothing. But 5% of what? $60,000, $700,000, $300,000, $95,000? Okay. you have to cap that. You have to say, oh, the seller we will only be bound to wait after 6 months after the target date upon which the buyer will notify the seller that the transaction will be canceled, and the seller will have to reimburse 100% of all payments made by the buyer, plus the interest accrued based on the agreement, plus whatever penalties there are, and any costs that the buyer had incurred, like my fees or notary fees or closing fees, all those other costs. So again, let's summarize where the reluctance about that you need to focus on. That the developer must accept to sit and come to the table and discuss fair terms with you. But you need to know what those terms have to be. Well, we have to review the purchase agreement from the developer. But if none of this are in there, and we don't know what are the terms and conditions they may ask that we have to address. But the most important things is to accept changes, to accept negotiation, to accept escrow in the event that they're not financing from the buyer. To don't have a reluctance to have me or someone like me take part in helping you negotiate. Reluctance about invoices and the dangers of not being able to deduct 100% of your cost of acquisition. The other is to agree to a specific target date that works for you, not something 5 years in the future. Don't put your money into construction. Buy something that is already built. But if you want to take chances, better know what you need to have in there to protect against default. So again, accept changes, accept escrow if possible, accept a professional real estate attorney to help with this, to agree to provide an invoice, to agree to a specific target date, and to accept penalties in the event of default. There you have it. It's been a while. I didn't get mad or get all red in the face. I was already red today. I was out there in the sun, and it's really shining bright. So make and take informed decisions. Don't just nod and sign documents and hand over money. A lot of people do this. Call it whatever you want. I don't care. It's your money, not mine. Still, a lot of people eventually will get grief because of their not willing to stand off for whatever is fair. Don't just nod and accept things. And if the seller will not accept to negotiate, move away. Buy something from someone else. There's plenty of options all over Baja. Make it work for you. Thank you. Bye now.